Jacob, just tell me, I mean, Pritzker seems to have been made for this moment or to be emulating what Gavin Newsom pioneered, both as an advocate for his city and state, and Karen Bass as well for her city. But just tell me where you see this heading this week and in the coming days.
Well, I think what they have all come to realize and understand is that not only is this a usurpation of their power, at least that's what they say. That's what Bass said on the streets. That's what Newsom was saying when it came to the calling up of the Guard and the deployment of the Marines. Obviously, he's not going to deploy the Marines to L.A., but when the Marines were on the streets of L.A. And Pritzker as well. And what they are communicating when they're saying, come get me, come arrest me, is that he said to me, he said, I don't know if we'll have an election, and we were joking about it, but I don't know if we'll have an election in 2026 or we will have the military outside of the ballot boxes. And so they are taking this from just an immigration-related issue to saying democracy is on the line here, ladies and gentlemen. And I think that's part of what is compelling people that, as you said, Cornell, may not have otherwise showed up for an immigration protest into the streets. That protest of 7 or 10,000 people up and down Michigan Avenue was not your ordinary immigration protest. That was people from all walks of life on the night that the Cubs' future was on the line in Chicago. It was a really electric, impressive thing to see. And I think because their local leaders are standing up and saying, this is about your neighbors, documented and undocumented, but it's not just about the future of who gets to live in this country. It's whether or not we get to have a free country at all.
Yeah, and Nicole, I'm gonna be a bad guy here because I'm gonna say, it's not bad for their politics thinking about running for president.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You look at Pritzker and you look at Newsom. You know, they've been outspoken. They've taken on this fight. They're doing everything the base has asked that they want to see more Democrats doing. And again, I'm completely neutral. I never want to work another presidential campaign as long as I live. But I got to tell you, I think this positions them well in a crowded field going into a Democratic primary.
Let me just give you an alternate analysis. I mean, president of what? Because right? Because like if this doesn't win, president of what? And I think that the MAGA world braids these things together, right? Why do 48 states pass voter suppression laws? They passed them predicated on a lie that Bill Barr told us was a lie. He told us it was bull bleep. It's Monday. I'll try to go through 2 hours without swearing. So the same thing with immigration raids and militarized federal law enforcement. Like, what are they on the streets for? Only the pro-democracy side is trying to answer that question. To MAGA, it's a Lollapalooza. They're there for all of it. They're there for mass deportations. They're there to make it scarier to vote. They have no plans on leaving. Like, we're the only side trying to unbraid what is just their mass overreach.
Yeah, I'm not kidding when I'm not sure there's going to be an election.
Yeah.
I'm not, right? I fingers crossed, I hope there's going to be an election. But if I look at everything that's happening in this country right now, I'm not 100% sure that these people aren't going to block an election. That he's not going to...
A free and fair election.
A free and fair election. That he won't, put military on the street, and especially in certain areas of the country. Military will be on the street to stop us getting in the way of having a free and fair election.
Tim, as the optimist here on the election front, set us straight.
Well, for starters, a lot of these midterm elections, the key races and the House races are going to happen in blue states, in places where people like Gavin Newsom are the governor. And so, who knows what we could all catastrophize together. But in the lead up to the elections, if we're concerned about, troops being outside voting locations, Trump's forces trying to intimidate folks outside of voting locations, Gavin Newsom and Kathy Hochul and Governor Pritzker and others, could try to counteract that in various ways. I hope we don't end up in that situation, but that's possible. And a lot of these House races are going to be in blue states or in swing states. So, look, I think that's part of it. And I think that a lot of times these efforts do backfire. This is not to be scared about anything. I talked to Mark Elias and you have. I'm actually kind of more scared about the post-election, like whether they try to do stop the steal again and fake seat people. But a lot of times these voter suppression efforts backfire. And we're seeing that in the streets now. Like their efforts, do you think that their efforts to smear the No Kings protesters as Antifa and un-American and terrorists and all that, Do you think that's going to make for smaller protests this week or bigger protests? I think bigger. And so a lot of times these efforts backfire, and I do think that you might see that both in the voting suppression and in the protest space.
What's
Look
so
at me
great.
being the optimist.
No, I love it. I love it. This is your job until further notice. But my favorite thing about calling the No Kings protest anti-America is it's literally the whole kernel of the idea about America was to not have a king. So, like, if that's become No Kings, like, I'm out. What are we doing here? And I think what is being tested is sort of the laboratory for fantastical lies. And to me, like, the news value of Rogan and Green isn't like, oh, look, it's too icky for them. No, because they went along with all of the BS ahead of the election. But once you start talking on a podcast, it is infinitely more difficult not to swear when you're having normal conversations. But the whole fantastical nature of No Kings is somehow Antifa. No Kings is the most American brand for any protest movement that America could ever have.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this is them always with the projecting, but it's what they're doing is anti-American. And there's nothing more, in addition to the kernel of the idea of No Kings being an American idea, the idea of being able to protest and speak out peacefully and march and say that what your government is doing is wrong is a fundamentally American principle. And then on top of that, if you just want to layer into it, I went to the No Kings protest in New Orleans in June, and it wasn't a Antifa type crowd. It was a lot of fanny packs and NPR tote bags at the crowd, and so it's not even attached to reality. It's like on every level it doesn't work. It's like offensive and a lie, and again, maybe it works in their information silo, but eventually that stuff gets popped if it's this fantastical, and if people see the difference with their own eyes.
Another, domino to fall, I think, that I've seen as a reporter out in the streets is we've talked about how it's not just the pro-immigration folks that are in the streets now, it's the pro-democracy people. But I think the three of us have actually talked about this before, if I'm not mistaken. I think members of the military, if they haven't already, may very well soon start to turn on this administration because of the way that they're being deployed to the streets. It's not just the Barranco children of Narciso Barranco, the Marines whose father was beaten by ICE as he was cutting bushes at a IHOP in Santa Ana, California, but it's the people from all of these communities from which, maybe even Texas, they are deployed and being asked to stand face to face with people who come from communities just like their own, asked to enforce the law in a way that they would overseas or in a combat zone with people from American communities. I can tell you firsthand that members of the National Guard that I've talked to are deeply uncomfortable about having to participate in a mission like this. And we're not talking about a small constituency. We're talking about the members themselves. We're talking about their families who, if you don't think they're talking to their families about this,
right.
You're wrong. I can tell you firsthand. I think that there are more constituencies yet to turn on this administration for the way that they're using the military in the streets, not just for immigration enforcement, but in the context of this democracy.
Well, and that's John Kelly's final warning before the election to America was that what he wanted to do and was blocked by people like Kelly and Madison Milley was to put the military on the streets. And the reason it's bad for a whole bunch of reasons. It's bad for Americans on the street who shouldn't be policed by our own military. But it's ultimately the worst for the members of the military who in a natural disaster show up to help and in a time of war, go far away to fight.
The question I would ask if I was Donald Trump's opponent is, do you really want a demoralized National Guard all in 50 states across the union because they're waiting to be deployed to hold long rifles up against their neighbors in between ICE detention centers and protests on the street? That is something for everybody, I think, who's joining the military today, 17, 18, 19 years old, to think about that they may be deployed for that purpose rather than the one that they think is a noble calling to stand in defense of this nation abroad.
Incredible. Thank you all for starting me off today like this. I needed that. Your new reporting is online now, right?
It is. I think there's a QR code on the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
I hope everybody can scan it and take a look because it will really debunk the things that you're hearing from this administration.
Right. I see the headline. I don't see the QR code, but we'll get it up there.
Great.
It's on just who these agents are picking up on the streets of Chicago. It's on our website right now, but